Morning. Seems like it's just one person on the chat right now, or on the Zoom right now, but we are going to record this so that folks that couldn't make it either in person live or in Zoom will be able to look at it later. My name is PJ Mann. I'm the owner of Puzzlescape in Hudson, and today we're doing a video walkthrough of our Escape the Cape room, and then we're going to do some behind the scenes with some of the tech activities that we use to run our room. So kind of a sneak peek at some of the technology that we use. We will be switching back a little bit on from the phone perspective video and the room video, but we'll try and make that not too crazy for everybody. So without further ado, we'll dive in. If you have questions, you can certainly choose to type them in the chat. Katie, who's the game master that's helping me with this, will be able to relay them to me, and one of us will be able to answer them. All right. Thanks very much for joining. All right. So now we will show our Escape the Cape room. Quick little pan around of the room itself. And we will go ahead and start solving. I hope I can get it done in 59 minutes. All right, so the first thing we'll be doing is, if you notice here, there is a little sign on the gate that conveniently says start here. And it's got a fishing rod, a little blue diamond, and a life preserver. And if you look across the room on that far wall, there is a life preserver and a blue diamond keychain that conveniently has a key on it. And we will find the fishing rod right here behind the door. And this fishing rod, not everybody realizes that it can extend a whole lot. So we're going to extend it to its full length. All right, that appears to be good. And then we go fishing. For the key. And because we are not masochists, we put a magnet on this keychain so that it's not required to actually hook the key or the diamond. But there is our first key. Do that in a second. Going to collapse the fishing pole. And then this key opens up the lock right here. And this gate opens up. And now we have access to the beach part of the room. So this is pretty neat, pretty interesting. This looks and feels like sand, but it actually is shredded cork, primarily because it is less dusty than sand. So we got a giant block of shredded compressed cork and shredded it, broke it up ourselves with hammers and saws and implements of destruction, and spread it all out in here. And now we have our nice and comfy sand for the room. So again, I'll give you kind of a view of the room as we go around. I'll jump into this treasure chest, which does not have a lock on it, conveniently. Chest within a chest. And there's a clue in the bottom of the chest that we will get back to in a bit. And then there is a telescope and a clue inside this chest. So it's probably hard to read over the Zoom, but this basically gives a definition of a telescope. This right here. It's an optical instrument for making distant objects appear larger and therefore nearer. And then it gives a sample sentence that says the sailors used a telescope to look through the porthole to view the birds in the distance. I wonder where that could be. So over here on the wall, there is a porthole. And then if you look very closely, it has a bunch of birds inside. And the compass rose, so it has north, south, east, west in there. And on the back of that paper clue, there gives another definition that says quadrant, which is a quarter of a circle, an arc of 90 degrees. And the sample sentence says, the birds in each quadrant convey important information. So if we were able to get close and look at these birds in each quadrant, you'll see that there is one bird here, 3 birds here, 2 birds here, and 4 birds there. So that's going to give the order of what we're solving here. What we're going to be solving is for this lock. It is a combination of letters, numbers, and symbols. And the trick on this one is there's a magnet on the end of this telescope. And when you hold it closely to the porthole, you will be able to see something light up each time that we get close. I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see that, but there's a lit up letter C in the first quadrant. If we go to the second quadrant, there is a lit up letter O. Third quadrant, a lit up letter D. And the fourth quadrant is a lit up exclamation point. So C0D exclamation is the combination of our first lock here. C0D exclamation. So obviously that spells cod with an exclamation point. And it's something that we often try and do in our design of rooms is, you can set these codes to absolutely positively anything. We try and set something that makes a little bit of sense in the room, but not likely that people will guess it. So that one is not very likely to be guessed. C0D exclamation point. We unscrew the porthole, open it up, and retrieve the key. This key goes into this Luscuz tunnel access control panel, which I forgot to give the intro spiel. Apologies for that. But basically, you're trying to open this drawbridge that covers this hidden entrance to the Cape. So instead of going over the Bourne and Sagamore bridges, you're going through this tunnel, beating all the traffic. So I'm going to insert the key here into our first section and keep an eye on the drawbridge. That opened just a little bit. And then back at the access control panel, this keypad popped open. So we're not quite ready to use that, but that is going to be available in the future. All right, next thing we'll dive into is in one of these conch shells, there's a little paper clue. And I'll just read it to you. It's just got images. So it's got an Adirondack chair minus a whale, that quantity times another Adirondack chair minus a sign. So if we look at these Adirondack chairs, a little hard to see, but you can tell that there is a Roman numeral printed on the front of each of them. There we go. So the trick on this one is noticing that this Adirondack chair is on brown or yellow, and this one is on green. So this chair being on green is the one that's in the grass, and this chair being on the brownish yellow is going to be the one that is in the sand. So when I decode the sand Roman numerals, it's 2022, which is when we opened this room. So that's the meaning of that one. So 2022 minus a whale. And if we look at on the wall here, there is a Cape Cod Whaling Company sign. And at the top of it, boldly, is a 1899 year. So the first half of our equation is 2022 minus 1899, and that is 123. And then if we come over to our second chair, Adirondack chair, and decipher that, that is 1935, which is actually the year, I believe that was the year that the Bourne Bridge opened. But that year has significance. I'm pretty sure that's what the year was when we designed the room. And then looking at this again, it's minus a green sign. And this has this fun little list of historic places. And it says Scudsboro, Mass., named after our infamous Pepe Lascuz. And it's established in 1925. And then it gives a bunch of alternative town names considered for Scudsboro. So some pretty funny ones there if you're able to read them. Some kind of mock town names. I like Leominster, Bergham, Shireton. That's the gigantic Massachusetts town name. So anyway, back to our puzzle. So we've got 2022 minus 1899. So that's 123. And then our green share is 1935 minus our green sign, which is 1925. So that second half is 10. So 123 times 10 is 1,230. And we just so happen to have a 4-digit lock here. 1, 2, 3, 0. There we go. We open that. And there we have some locks, or excuse me, some magnets hanging on here. So if we go to the cooler, which we conveniently crop open with a crab in the corner because it's really hard once it gets stuck. Inside the cooler is this round wooden box with numbers 1 through 12. All right. So coming back, we have a picture inside here. You might not be able to make it out, but it shows a sundial with an arrow to this round wooden box. And we take these magnets, and underneath there are clues. Well, there's partly exposed and partly underneath. So it says the first one is the only number used twice in the same color. And it is green as a hint that the color that you're looking for is green. So if we come over to our sundial here, let's move the telescope out of the way. We're done with that. So our sundial box has several buttons on top of it, and the sundial inside placed in glass. So we need to find green, blue, yellow, white, green. All right, so again, probably going to be hard to see, but the green lights that are shining down in the sundial box hit the Roman numeral 5 twice. It's 5, 5, and 6. So the number used twice in green is 5. So I'll go back to our wooden box, put a magnet on 5. And our second clue is the only even yellow. Okay, so again, we'll come back to the light up box, figure out which button is yellow. Right there. So yellow has 7, 3, and 2 lit up. So we know that 2 is the only even yellow. So then we put 2 onto this box. So we have 2 and 5 so far. And then the sum of reds divided by the number between the smallest blues. Okay. So the sum of reds, find the reds. There's the reds. All right. Again, it's hard to see, but you'll see that they are on 7, 10, 11, and 12, which adds up to 40. And then we're dividing that sum by the number between the smallest blues. So the smallest blues are on the right here, and the number in between them is 5. So 40 divided by 5, 8 is our third little magnet. 8. And then our last clue in this box says how many blinks. So the button we have not used yet over here, if we hold it down, it starts blinking inside the box. And if you count the blinks, there are 12 of them. And it will stop when it gets to 12, pause for 5 or 10 seconds, and then restart the blinking. So 12 is our last number here. So we put our magnet on 12. And we couldn't do this before, but now we were able to spin, rotate that center piece, and there is a deck of cards inside. All right. So there's also a clue printed on the inside that says the jokers will guide your way. So if we go through the jokers inside here, the jokers tell you The suits from left to right are spades, heart, diamonds, clubs, and it says 3 numbers will be revealed. And then it also says, going in the downward direction, king, queen, jack, 10, 9. So basically laying them down in order, and that the cards will overlap. So I will show you spades. All right. So on these cards, there are little marks in black. Upside down. But we start laying them out again. Spades were the leftmost column, going from king down to ace as the lowest. Go and find all the spades. All right, so now we continue laying these out. Some of the cards are blank. They're just kind of spaces between letters. And then these 3, 2, and ace are blank as well. So what we can see so far, if you look at the letters that are shaded on these letters, there's an F, a Z, and an E. So if we were to repeat that with each of the suits going left to right, you would then see it would spell out 5, 0, 8. So this is kind of a fun one. Once the light bulb goes on and people are able to see what they're seeing, it spells out pretty clearly. And it is funny from the control room sometimes, if they have the camera set up there from the control room, and literally we are able to see them spelling out 508 on these cards, and sometimes the groups aren't seeing it yet. So it's funny to hear the aha, like, oh wait, that's an F, oh that's a Z, and then they realize it's 508. So 508 happens to be this combination lock here. Five, 0, 8. That unlocks this chain, which then unlocks this pole, which has a little black pad on the top. And we can now come out from the wall with this pole on a chain, but we can't really go anywhere with it yet. And that is by design. We don't want people whacking too many things with that pole. And then our lock. One thing I forgot to mention with the sand, we often would lose things in the sand. And if it's not magnetic, it's really hard to find in the sand. I'm sure when we break down the room, we will find various objects, maybe even Jimmy Hoffa buried in the sand here. I don't know. But after we were open for a little while, we added this shelf that says, place used items here, just so that people wouldn't toss the padlock into the sand and we'd never find it again. All right, so we got that pole unlocked, and that's kind of the end of that puzzle path. We can now go back to this paper here that was in the larger treasure chest. It's got a picture of the room on one side and a little poem, a little riddle. It says, this treasure map marks an item you seek. X marks the spot. Dig and take a peek. But to know what to do with your prize will take much more discerning eyes. The pirate gold shall cover a letter for you, which lights up a foggy glass for all of your crew. Who and what are now known by you all. Seek the where and the why up on the wall. And if you can't tell, the why is double bolted and underlined. On the back side of this, like I said, is a picture of the room. We've got the Lascuz tunnel. We've got the lobster trap, which is up there on the wall. We also have the temperature control unit, which is our air conditioner in the corner here. we have the gate of no return, which was the gate that we opened previously. And over here to the left of the temperature control unit and in front of a buoy is a red X. So on the other side, it told us to dig and take a peek where that X is. Let's come over here, dig into the sand, and lo and behold, there is this gold pirate necklace. And so as we go to try and find a spot to use this, I'll kind of point out this wooden box on the wall that is kind of frosted over glass. And the clue tells us to look for the where and the why. And around the room, near a lot of the portrait and sign, are little letters like an R, an I, an H. And so you need to realize that the Y is what you're looking for. So not W-H-Y, but the letter Y. So there's the letter Y under our porthole. We'll put the pirate gold on there. Get a little singing from Disney there. And if you look back here, that frosted glass that was in there is now blinking yellow. So it's no longer frosted. You can see through it, and it is got a handful of clues in there. So the top of this paper inside says a man, a plan, a canal, Panama. And that is a pretty famous palindrome sentence. Palindrome meaning it is the same forwards and backwards. So a man, a plan, a canal, Panama says the same thing forwards and backwards. So that's to tip people off that all of the 4 clues that are in here are palindromes. So the first one is how bats, quote unquote, see, or what speed traps use. And oftentimes before people realize what they're looking for, they say sonar, and sonar fits, and the last letter is R, but the word we're actually looking for is radar, which conveniently also ends in R. So our first letter out of these combinations is R. And then the second is 12 hours after midnight, so noon, N-O-O-N. And we want the second letter, so we have R-O so far. And then the third clue is a vehicle in a speed contest, and that is a race car. So R-A-C-E-C-A-R. The third letter C is what we want, so we have R-O-C. And then a small boat with paddles. People normally, this is one where we would trip them up, because if they haven't realized it's palindromes, they think it's canoe. And the last letter of canoe is what they're looking for, would be E, and so they're using R-O-C-E. But actually, a small boat with paddles that is a palindrome is kayak. So the last word is K, so R-O-C-K is what we're looking for. So if we go over here to our lobster trap, and we go with R-O-C and K. That unlocks this lock. Now we have access to the lobster trap. There we go. And so now we are able to use this pole that we unlocked earlier. You can tell up into the lobster trap, there's a center portion of the lobster trap that this pole conveniently fits right into, and there's an object up on top. And so basically we're just going to try and whack that object out. Well, nailed it on the first try. I think I've done this before. And that launched this object out. And this is called a Jefferson wheel. It is like a cryptex in that it spins. These wheels spin, and they have letters and symbols and numbers on them. But like I said, it is not a cryptex, because a cryptex, you would line these up in a certain spot and it would open. You would pull it apart and open. A lot of you have seen that in different escape rooms or in the Da Vinci Code movie or book. So it's both of those. So this one is not cryptex that opens. So we have golf balls here that we haven't looked at yet. On several of the golf balls, there are clues. It says rising and falling are red herrings. I'll explain that in a minute. It says enter high or low tide and check adjacent row. And then the last one says you seek what lies between high and low tide. So the meanings of these are on this clock over here.
on the wall. You're probably not going to be able to see it, but it has rising and falling. It's a tide clock. It's got a picture of the cape on it. Rising and falling, left and right, and then high tide and low tide, top and bottom. And underneath or next to each of those codes, there is I don't know how many letters, but a long encoded word. And so what I will do is, so if you remember, rising and falling are red herrings. We're not using rising and falling. They're not solutions, not puzzles at all. High and low tide, we seek what lands between high and low tide. So the interesting part of this wheel is that we could enter either high tide or low tide. And actually, we are entering both of them. So it's going to be, again, difficult to see. But if I put L, okay, so L is now in place on my first wheel. And then G, L, G, V. Okay, so again, you probably won't be able to see this, but on the first three wheels, I have L, G, V. 2 rows below that, I have the first 3 letters of low tide, V, B, N. So that's what it is on the low tide on this chart. And if we look in between those 2 rows, excuse me, in between those 2 rows is O, N, E. So basically, this is going to be giving us numbers. When I entered the entire code, it will say one. There we go. Again, probably not able to see it really well, but if I enter the entire top code, 2 rows below it is the entire bottom code, the low tide, and in between it says 1782. 1782, and I forgot to mention there's a little starfish sticker on the side of this, and there also happens to be a starfish sticker on here. So 1782. All right, and our drawbridge opened a little bit further. And in a second, there we go. The third part of our Lascuz tunnel control panel opened. And inside that, there is a joystick. And there is a clue inside here. On the front side of this clue, it says, you may be getting close, but you will never be able to figure out the final step to open my secret tunnel. I will give you a chance, however. Can you solve the steps on the back of this note? It will give you much joy. Stick to the plan. I hope you fail miserably so I can keep my tunnel secret. Dastardly yours, Pepe Lascuz. So it's pointing them to the joystick in there with that clue. And on the back side, there's a series of steps. And it says 1, 2, 3, 4 step number. And it says enter this direction this many times. Okay, so it says first direction, or our first step, is from the place the Mayflower actually first anchored. Hint, it's not Plymouth, to the beach at Craigville. So if we come over to our map on the wall here, there's a picture of the Mayflower, and it says the Mayflower anchored here first. It actually anchored outside of Provincetown. And then the second was to the beach at Craigville. So the beach at Craigville is down here on the map. So our first step is going from the Mayflower to the beach at Craigville. Our first step is south or down. And then the second part of this riddle on the right-hand side, it has this many times, and it's got some symbols here that we haven't really noticed in the room just yet. And the trick on this one is that if you peek inside our tunnel, there is a clue taped behind there that says Lascuz encryption tool. And it has a blue heart, a red star, and a yellow lightning bolt with the numbers 6, 3, and 2 inside them. So in this case, we have a red star minus a yellow lightning bolt. So that's 3 minus 2 plus, and then there's this green clover. And another word for clover is club. So we have all of these golf clubs on the wall, and the green one is painted with the number 3. So we have 3 minus 2 plus 1, plus 3 is 4. So our first step is entering this direction south this many times, 4 times. And then basically you would repeat this process with other clues. So the second step is from Buzzards Bay to Easterly Gales. And it would be the Red Club. So the Red Club has a 6. The Red Star was a 3. And then the orange golf ball has a number on it. So inside here, we would go through and find those numbers. And then the third clue is from a place that starts with F and ends in mouth on the Cape. So Falmouth, Falmouth, is on the Cape. And then it goes to a place that starts with P and ends in mouth on the mainland. So we're going from Falmouth to Plymouth. Okay? It even says Plymouth is not on Cape Cod. And then the last step is the canal between the mainland and the Cape. So that's our Cape Cod Canal right here. Going from there to a place that starts with a vowel and is similar to a famous city in Louisiana. So the famous city in Louisiana is New Orleans. On the Cape, it is Orleans. So just that one. So our 4 directions are south, east, north, and east again. And again, you would get the numbers from on the right-hand side, doing all the math with the, oh, you got it? Okay. With the joystick manipulations. And there, let's see if I can remember this one off the top of my head. So it's south, south 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. East, oh boy, once. North, 1, 2, 3. And the last one is east twice. Hey, I got it. So our drawbridge then opens fully. Yay, drawbridge open and singing We Are the Champions from the TV. 29.5 minutes. That's pretty good time. Helps when you've designed the room. All right, I'm going to switch off from this device and we'll switch over to our other laptop. Hang on, hold tight for a minute.
All right, so we're done our walkthrough of the solutions to Escape the Cape, and now we're going to start breaking it down. And first, I'm actually going to spend some time just going through some of the tech, some of the behind-the-scenes things that go on in the escape room, just for you guys to understand what happens, how they're built, how they're designed. First and foremost, there are very few chain escape rooms. There are some out there, but we are a mom and pop. I'm the pop of the mom and pop organization. And so all of the designs, all of the tech, we build and manage all of that in-house. So with myself and my team, we do all of our rooms, all our designs are unique. Let's see, this room is our 16th, maybe 17th room. I kind of lost track a little bit over the years between our couple of locations. Yeah, so like I said, I'm going to start giving some behind the scenes views of what happens in these rooms. So first, you look at the TV screen that is in the room. We haven't reset it from when we just ran, but it's got the time counting down, in this case, 29 minutes, 30 seconds. And it has a background video that basically it's a half-hour video, I think, and it scrolls on a loop of just some beach scenes. That TV screen and the background video is all managed through a software called Mythic Mystery Master, or M3 for short. It's a software package specifically for running escape rooms. There are a few different ones out there. That's the one that we're using now. We use a different version in a different software in our previous location. But basically, that is the software that our game masters control the game through that software. Okay, it's their interface into the software. So if they would ever type a clue, the clue would show up on the bottom of the screen, it would make in this room, it makes a conch shell noise, the sound of a conch shell being blown through. But there are a lot of different files and setups that you can do. So again, that's Mystery Master M3. It's also, if we have any videos or audio that we want to send, we can send that through the TV. In this room, for example, we have the telescope here that flew, and people would always start with the 5 feet away from the telescope, and the magnet doesn't operate until you're actually up against the glass. And we had a short little video clip. Thought it was funny to have it as a clip from Silence of the Lambs of Hannibal Lecter when he says to Clarice through the big glass wall to show her credentials. Closer, please. So we have just that little portion of the clip, which is funny because the little kids have no idea what it is there. The adults recognize it from Silence of the Lambs and get a chuckle. So yeah, we would send you the video or audio clips through that TV screen. Okay. The second component from a hardware perspective is a controller called a PLC, or a programmable logic controller. This is basically a programmable, obviously it's all programmable, logic controller that handles all of the inputs and outputs through our system. Okay, so inputs are, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but things like sensors, switches being made, those types of things are inputs. And so our PLC handles all of that, does all the code and logic programming behind the scenes, and then it'll set outputs. We then have some Fright Props controllers that are more, Fright Props is a brand, it's a company that does a lot in the haunt industry, but also does a lot in the escape room industry. And we use those controllers for kind of specific localized tasks. For example, here we use it on our joystick. There's a controller behind there that has that logic in there for the solution of the joystick, the south 3 times, et cetera, et cetera. It goes through all of those steps. And it'll also play if you get the direction wrong. Probably not on now because the room is just reset. It'll play a funny sound if you get the logic wrong. So I was talking a little bit about inputs. So I wanted to give an example of one of the inputs that we use. So as I mentioned before, this telescope in the room has a magnet on this face of it. So that's a magnet. And in the porthole, you remember earlier, I can't pull the cord and show you. In the porthole that had the pictures of the birds in the different quadrants, behind the porthole, there are 4 little switches called reed switches. They're very prevalent. They're used all over the place. If you ever had like a flip phone, that is the device that causes your phone to either go on when you open it up or go off when you close the flip phone. But basically, it's a very small device that when a magnet gets close to it, it completes the circuit, completes a switch. So what we would do is in our PLC, we would be monitoring for the 4 different reed switches in the porthole. And when this magnet touched or got close enough to one of those 4 switches, it would close that contact and turn on the light behind the corresponding quadrant in the porthole. So that's an example of both an input programmable controller and an output working together. The input being the reed switch, the programmable logic controller saying, okay, which reed switch was connected, and then determining which light behind that porthole to turn on. So that's an example of how the tech works: is inputs, logic, outputs. So that's the reed switch. We also have a device called an RFID sensor, which most folks have heard of those. The RFID sensor is, excuse me, in this room, we're using this Pirate doubloon, Pirate Gold, and on the back of it, again, very hard to see, but on the back of it, there is a round disc that is actually a RFID chip, an RFID token. They go by different names. And different than a reed switch, where the reed switch works with any magnet closing that reed switch, the RFID, will only work with this chip or any chip that we have programmed for that RFID controller. As a result, this is coded to a specific sensor in the room. So in this case, below the porthole, if you remember, we had the letter Y that we had to hold this doubloon, the golden Pirate Gold. So we would hold that there over the letter Y, and that would then tell the controller, hey, they put this chip in the right location, and we're going to go and do the outputs. In this case, if you remember when we put the gold doubloon there, the outputs were the light in that frosted gold thing, and it got rid of the frosted gold. That's just a low voltage piece of glass in there that when you send a voltage through it, it makes it see through, but it also turns the light on, flashes the light. So differences between an RFID and a reed switch. So in general, like I mentioned before, magnets, the reed switch you can use with any magnets. So if you have a bunch of magnets for some reason in the room and you only want a specific one to trigger a specific action, you want to use an RFID instead, because like I said, the chip on the back of this RFID, it has a code. You can put any other RFID chip on top of there or any magnet on top of there, and it would not work until you put the RFID that you've programmed to work with that RFID segment. An area where people see RFIDs in the real world, like badges to badge in and out of work or secured doors or something like that. Those badges are RFID technology, or EasyPass. If you're using like EasyPass in your car, your module that you're mounting on your windshield or on the back of your mirror, that contains basically the same technology. It's an encoded RFID chip. That's how they know that it goes with your car. So that coded RFID chip is picked up by the sensors up above. So that's how we use RFIDs. Reed switches, again, they can be used for any magnet. They're generally simpler from a technology perspective than RFID. And if you're concerned about placement, the way you can handle that is by putting the magnet in a specific location so that it only fits where it would hit the reed switch. An example of that was in our For Goodness Sake room. We had a bunch of different horseshoes, and on the back of those horseshoes were magnets in different locations. So when you would hang the horseshoe, there was really only one spot to hang the horseshoes. Depending on which magnet was on the back of the horseshoe, would trigger whether you were in the right location. And so the reason that we did that application was because the RFID token is a little bigger than a quarter, would stand out a lot in the application where we're doing it on horseshoes or reindeer shoes. So we used a smaller magnet that blended in with the horseshoes. So another input example we have is the joystick. So I mentioned before where we have the joystick over here. Move the joystick up, down, left, right, and there's a controller behind here that says when you've entered the correct pattern, boom, it's solved. So yeah, up, down, left, right, whatever the pattern is. And like I said, it plays a song, an audio clip rather when it's right, and an audio clip when it's wrong. This keypad is also an input. So in our case, we had 1782. It's off now because those are running. But 1782 was our solution. You would go ahead and enter that 4-digit code. Similar to the joystick, it's got a little controller behind there that would say, yep, you entered the right code, and it will set an output to our PLC, and the PLC will then open this mag switch. I'll get into the outputs in a second. There's other sensors out there that we can use as inputs. There's motion sensors, so just detecting a motion. There's light sensors, metal sensors. So sometimes if you want it to start when you specifically have a metal touching the sensor. Or a weight sensor. So those are all examples of things where they're inputs to our programs into our process. From an output, I've kind of talked about a few of these. There's this actually convenient here. We have two different types of switches here, of outputs here. This one is just a standard mag lock. So it's a 12-volt device. And basically this metal plate down here goes up and it holds quite strongly the metal plate onto the mag lock when the mag lock is not when it is energized. So this mag lock, it's like 100 pounds of holding force. So yeah, if you hung on it, it might fall off, but I wouldn't recommend doing that in the escape room anyway. So anyway, we would have, in the case of this one, we're kind of going in reverse order. But when we would enter the correct code on this keypad, the PLC would get the input saying, hey, the code has been entered. And the PLC will then say, okay, correct code has been entered.
turn off the power to this mag lock. And this mag lock de-energizes, and this, just based on gravity, pops open and hangs down. Okay. So that's the mag lock. The second, it's similar, but not quite the same. We call these mag switches or cabinet switches, cabinet locks. This little black device has a little notch in it, and this metal piece here fits right into that notch. Okay. And the way that this one works, very similar. The PLC will tell it when to unlock. The difference with this one is that the PLC, this one stays in this state when it is de-energized. So you would push this up and click it in place. And the PLC, when it wants to open it, it will send an output for just a second, or not even a second, a half of a second, and it would release the latching mechanism inside that, and then it would pop open. Okay. There are different reasons that we use different applications. The reason we use this one in this way is based on the fit. So the fit of the mag lock, I was worried about it not fitting in this second location, so I used this cabinet switch. So that one just, like I said, plugs into there. And then another example here within our control panel is just this simple key. Again, there's a physical key that you find earlier in the room, goes into this plate and turns, and when you can kind of hear the click, when you make that click connection, the switch connection, it's just like these other things. The PLC, the controller, treats that as an input. So it sees you making that connection, sends a signal back to the PLC and says, hey, that key switch has been turned. So then based on the logic that key switch is turned, you do your action. In this case, it was opening the drawbridge to the tunnel. So the first couple of steps open the drawbridge a little bit, and then the last one opens up the rest. Let's see. So there's a lot of different things that we can do with our low voltage wiring. I've mentioned that a lot of our stuff is 12 volts, and that's been the vast majority of things that we use. However, there are some things that need line voltage, 120 volt, alternating current, so like your house outlets and that kind of thing. So we don't do anything electrically with those, but we have little outlets that are controllable, little plug-in outlets that are controllable that we can turn devices on and off with. So those, we use a brand called Philips Hue. There's lots of them out there. People use them with their Alexas or their Siris and Google Home, that kind of stuff. But we're using them through Philips Hue. So again, back in our control room where we have our PLC and our Fright Props controllers, there would be a Philips Hue controller that again would basically turn a switch on or off, or we can control specific light bulbs. So we could like turn a light on full brightness or dim brightness, or make it red or blue. Lots of different things that you can do with Philips. But again, the difference being those are 120 volts. We're not messing with that from a technology perspective. We'll use CAN solutions for those. So that's when we use those. So I'll just walk through a little bit of the different types of inputs and outputs specifically that we used in this room. I've already touched on the key switch input, the number pad input, and the joystick input. That's those three there. If we look down there, the frosted glass that is on the wall, again, that is, well, the majority of it is 120 volt. Light inside it is 12 volt. So that would take the input from the Pirate's Gold being put in the correct spot, and the output from the PLC would do several things. The first thing is that it turns on that glass that I mentioned before that is frosted until you send voltage through it. So the PLC will tell it to basically defrost that glass. It blinks the yellow light in there for about 30 seconds, and then it leaves the light on solid, and that it accomplishes through a 12 volt output. And then, actually, no, the glass, the frosted glass is through Philips Hue. That's a plug-in. It's a 120 volt system. So we just turn that light, that frosting on or off. So that's the glass there. So we come around the room. These are actually relatively low tech from a room perspective. These are all just physical locks that we're using in this space.
But the last big thing is the drawbridge or the tunnel in front of the drawbridge, or excuse me, drawbridge in front of the tunnel. So those you can see left and right, there are two heavy duty winches. So these are run on 120 volt, one winch here, one winch there, basically doing the tension in these lines. And this would lift the gate up and down. Like I said, those are 120 volts, so we don't mess with them from a wiring standpoint, but we will turn them on or off using 12 volt or Phillips hue. The last little fun thing in the room from a technology perspective, the camera's not going to be able to pick it up, but there's the air conditioner over there in the corner. There's the air conditioning hose that is covered over by some netting and mesh that goes out to outside of the parking lot. Underneath there in the wall, there is a little button that we press when the game masters are resetting the room. They know that that's there. We tell people otherwise, don't touch this, don't touch anything around there. You can't see it. It's hidden. Nobody's ever tried to find it. But that button is how we manually raise and lower the drawbridge. I wanted that to be done from within the room because over time, the tension on the winches on this drawbridge change slightly. And so it isn't just close it for 30 seconds or close it for 20 seconds. So we have it here with just push button, basically close it until I let go of the push button. And similarly, when we are opening the drawbridge, you guys may have seen me, I'm talking to someone, playing with the little remote control here. So there's different versions of these, but they're pretty standard. It's like a garage door opener type of thing. This one has two buttons, and we use it for two things in the room. The first, the A button, is to start the room. So we get the room going based on that. And then the second is, excuse me, saying that it's okay, it's safe to open the drawbridge. Basically, when the drawbridge opens the first couple of times, the little opens a little, no safety concern. But when we're opening the drawbridge fully, we don't want anybody to get squished. So we make it so that the game masters have to be able to physically see that there's nobody underneath, and they'll hold the B button down to allow the drawbridge to open. So from a tech, kind of behind the scenes perspective, that's pretty much everything. Unless Katie, you can think of anything that I missed?
I don't think so.
Shaking your head. Any questions from anyone?
No.
No? All right. So with that, we are planning on winding down this walkthrough and solutions activity. But we're looking ahead to what we're doing with this space in the remainder of 2023. When we originally set up our new location here, we have space for 5 different rooms. And last year at Christmas time, we had a completely unused space. And so we decided, you know what, rather than this space is intended for our seasonal rooms, rather than take down Escape the Cape at Christmas time, we built our For Goodness Sake room in an available space. So moving forward, that won't be the case, and this space will be reverted to what we're calling our quick change room. So most of our permanent rooms have at least a 2-year lifespan on them. Excuse me, kind of monitoring how we book them, how well they're doing, anything we want to tweak or adjust on them. But this space is intended as being lower tech, a little bit easier design. As you notice, it's just a single room, so there's no hidden doors. Drawers. We built that whole stone wall, the drawers and everything. But behind it is just a regular block wall. So this space is intended, again, to be more seasonal escape rooms. Quick change, we're calling it. So is it going to be this year's Christmas room or holiday room? It might be an Easter room or a St. Patrick's Day room or 4th of July or who knows what, Halloween. We're not sure what exactly all the design options will be, but the intention here being that we'll change this space over several times a year. So 3 or 4 months for a room and then switch it over to the next design. As a result, this room will tend to be generally less high tech, just because it's easier to throw a physical lock on something than to wire up a mag lock back to the controller, set up the programming and everything. So we're going back to the original intention with this space is as our quick change space. So this year we'll be doing a holiday room in this space. And as we've always for our holiday rooms, we're targeting opening Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. So we will be sending out a link this evening that kind of launches the theme for our holiday room in this space this year. So look forward to that and look forward to keeping an eye out for that announcement. And otherwise, if there aren't any questions, we will wrap up. Thanks everybody for joining, and we look forward to seeing you here at Puzzlescape in the future.